I do not want to rule out the possibility that they let it happen, but at the same time, there is increasing evidence, in my opinion, that the Israelis were fooled by Hamas into believing that they are not preparing anything. But at the same time, they were planning it for 2 years. But the information coming from Iran and Syria, and also very reliable information, they had no clue that Hamas was preparing for this. And everybody wants to say Hamas is supported by Iran. That is true. And supported by other players. That is true. But the operation itself, nobody knew about it. In Damascus, they had no clue. And in Damascus, they don't trust Hamas as well. And people need to understand that Syria and Hamas, they don't have good relationship after 2012 because Hamas sided with Qatar and Turkey against Syria. So they don't trust Hamas. And there is the argument that says, what if Hamas is trying to drag other countries into regional conflict? And I'm not adopting that argument, but I would say that if these acts of hostilities, in my opinion, expand, we are very, very easily faced with regional war. And see what the Australians are doing now. They also sent their special forces to the Middle East. The Germans sent their special forces to Cyprus. Everybody is getting ready. NATO is expanding in Greece. So hopefully this will not expand. But just as we speak, Israel bombed Aleppo International Airport again. They are provoking Syria into extent that they want retaliation from Syria, so that if any strategic sites were hit in Israel, then also the United States has the encouraged to intervene in this. And remember what the Americans are spreading now. Fox News and everyone, those who call themselves anti-war
Big time.
Anti-war conservatives.
Screaming for it.
What a cook. Sorry for this language, but there is this argument now that they are spreading among their followers that Hamas and Hezbollah are infiltrating the borders in the southern United States, and these terrorists, quote unquote, are going to conduct terrorist attacks on American soil. So we are one step away, one false attack away from, in my opinion, from a regional war, and everybody is getting ready for that. It's not a coincidence that everybody is sending troops to the Middle East and improving their position there. So when you imprison people, 2 million people in a very small square kilometer, and you control their food, you control their electricity, and you control their internet. And we can see now the Israeli side is able to disable all these services, right? And also block their ports, and they don't have an airport. Just put yourself in the place of these people. I truly believe that the human nature has a violent side in it. And if you are cornered, and if you're living in such circumstances, which I haven't, but I have seen war in Syria because I come from Syria, and sometimes you become violent and you want to free yourself, whether from your fears or from the persecution and injustice that you feel is inflicted upon you from the other side. And I think it's very difficult to equate the both sides together, because there is an occupation and there is occupied people here. And this is not me giving analysis. The UN was very clear about it for decades now. There are resolutions after resolutions telling the Israelis to withdraw to the line of 4th of June 1967 war. And the Israelis are refusing to do that. They occupy the West Bank, they siege the Gaza Strip, they occupy the Golan Heights, and they occupy the Shab'a farms in Lebanon. And they're expanding in the West Bank through the settlements. And unfortunately, they are encouraging lots of people, especially among the Jewish Zionist people from all around the world, to come to Israel for what they say is the birthright. So they can come to Israel and they can get the Israeli passport. And therefore, they occupy the territories of the Palestinians. If we remember this very famous video of a person called Jacob, who comes from Manhattan, and he was breaking through the farm of another person in Palestine, in the West Bank. And when they ask him, "What are you doing, Jacob, here?" he says, "I'm stealing the land." And he says, "This is my land." And he says, "If I don't steal it, then somebody else will steal it." So this is the logic, in my opinion, in the Zionist mentality, that it's their right, the religious right and also ideological right, to have a presence over the Palestinian territories, that it's not theirs. Now, from the Palestinian point of view, there are so many Palestinians, in my opinion, they do not even accept that Israel has the right to have a statehood over Palestinian territories. They believe in one-state solution for both the Jewish people, Christian people, and the Muslim people to live together. But I believe after decades of hostilities, and I'm not saying each side is innocent from this, there's so much hostilities and so much grievances between these sides that it is almost impossible now to let all these people to live together. So unfortunately, I'm saying that I do not see a political solution for this, because the parties involved in this conflict, who are they? The United States is in the back of Israel, the UK is in the back of Israel, and the so-called collective West. And none of them presented any ceasefire proposal. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. Please let me know if my voice is sound and clear in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. The last few seconds of this video stopped from broadcasting. Apparently, all these softwares that we pay money for in order to do such live streamings, despite that this is a StreamYard and it should be one of the best according to lots of people, still suffers from some of these problems. Anyways, I was on Gareth Icke's show, the son of David Icke. I'm sure most of you know who is David Icke. And he hosted me about this recent escalation in Palestine, Israel. And we chatted together about 40 minutes. And good audio. Thank you very much, guys. So we discussed together this escalation in the Middle East. And I just showed you 4 or 5 minutes segments. He will publish it in length on his website, but you had, let's say, exclusive view of this two of these clips. I wanted it for my audience, for myself. But I was speaking about this Jacob case, right? And you remember, I don't know if you guys know this the story of Jacob and why I am mentioning him now, because there are people around the world who believe they have a divine right according to their book, Bible, the Old Testament, or whatever they believe in, that they can come to Palestine and they can take over territories that do not belong to them. I mean, we're living in 2023 and we're not living 3000 BC or 1000 BC or even or not even 1000 after the Christianity, right? We're living in 2023 and people have their properties, people have paid money for their properties and they have it on their name. Unfortunately, though, there are people who do not believe in that, and one of these people is Jacob. And I will tell you why I'm mentioning this case, because I'm going to link it with a very important case that is happening nowadays. And this is Jacob, and he's walking into the property of other Palestinian people in the West Bank, which is according to international law belongs to the Palestinians, and he's stealing the land of these people. And then they ask, this woman tells him, Jacob, what are you doing? You're stealing my land. Look what he says.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي. Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? What are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
It's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house. You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
So, according to Jacob, if he doesn't steal this land, somebody else will come and steal it. And why I'm mentioning this example, because today we're going to discuss what Benjamin Netanyahu himself said. This was only yesterday during a press conference when he addressed the nation of the Israeli nation, and he evoked religious prophecy in this Israeli-Gaza war. So he said in an address to the nation about the looming ground invasion into Gaza, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu evoked images of light and dark, promising to save the nation from Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, which attacked Israel on October 7th. He said, quote, "We are the people of light, they are the people of darkness, and light shall triumph over darkness." He said also, quote, "Our war against Hamas is a test for all of humanity. It is a struggle between the axis of evil of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and the axis of freedom and progress." Netanyahu went on saying again, I quote, "It is now a time to come together for one purpose, to storm ahead to achieve victory in with joint forces and a profound belief in justice, a profound belief in the eternity of the Jewish people. We shall realize the prophecy of Isaiah." This rhetoric is very dangerous, and this is why I titled it "It's a Very Dangerous Rhetoric." And I was just checking now on my Patreon, one of our patrons, her or his name is Jace, saying that he is not the first megalomaniac to appropriate slivers of religious text, strip it off its context, then regurgitate it as justification for their selfish ambition. Yeah. I mean, one of the most dangerous things that could happen in 2023 is somebody holding a book. Imagine me coming to you guys holding this book and telling you this is a holy book in my belief. And this book tells me that this land is mine, your apartment is mine. Or I could come and justify a killing of other people by calling them infidels, like terrorist organizations in Syria have done in in the previous years, right? It's very difficult to deal with such people when they believe in a religious text and they want to adopt it in the current times, especially when they distort the meaning of the religious text or they use it as a justification for violence. It's very difficult to deal with such people. I mean, you cannot find a reasonable ground to discuss with this type of people, in my opinion. It's very difficult to discuss with someone who believes that his God is righteous and you are wrong. And his God has given him the right to do whatever he deems to do in order to achieve his goals, whatever is that goal, right? So that's why we can see lots of groups, state and non-state actors, they use religion in order to first mobilize their own people against their enemy, and secondly, to justify the atrocities they commit against their enemy. And this is very dangerous, in my opinion, in 2023, as I mentioned, as it gives these people not only a carte blanche, but also it gives them all the justification and all the legal grounds according to their conviction to commit any sort of crimes. So when I see such a rhetoric coming from Benjamin Netanyahu, it terrifies me because I've seen what other actors in the region have done in the name of religion. So is he going to copy that? It seems so. It seems people are going out of people are losing their minds nowadays, and it's not only in Israel but also in the United States. And I will show you and I will prove to you how is that happening. So this is the statement of Netanyahu, just for you guys to know that what he said literally is: "We are the people of the light; they are the people of darkness. We shall realize the prophecy of Isaiah."
Our war against Hamas is a test for all of humanity. It is a struggle between the axis of evil of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and the axis of freedom and progress. We are the people of the light. They are the people of darkness, and light triumph over darkness. Citizens of Israel, October 7th was a very dark and black day in our history. We will fully investigate what had happened at our southern border, the border with Gaza. Everybody will have to provide answers, myself included, but all that will happen only after the war. As a prime minister, I'm responsible for guaranteeing the future of this country, and now my role is to lead all Israelis, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, to an overpowering victory. It is now a time to come together for one purpose: to storm ahead to achieve victory. With joint forces and a profound belief in our justness, a profound belief in the eternity of the Jewish people, we shall realize the prophecy of Isaiah. There will no longer be stealing at your borders, and your gates will be of glory. Together we will fight. Together we will win.
So the prophecy of Isaiah. And I am myself a Christian, and to be honest with you, maybe I'm an ignorant Christian. I haven't heard of the Isaiah's prophecy, so I digged into the matter. And there are so many things that we can discuss about this, and it's terrifying. That's why I'm showing you this. Netanyahu defeating Hamas will make prophecy of Isaiah a reality. And in Luke 16:8, Jesus spoke of the people of the light. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. Guys, let me know in the comments below if you understand this, what this Luke 16:8 says. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly, for the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. And the other one is translated to English. Netanyahu's statement appeared to be a reference to Isaiah 16:18, which says, quote, "Violence shall no more be heard in your land, devastation or destruction within your borders. You shall call your walls salvation and your gates praise." In that same chapter, just 2 verses prior to the one quoted by Netanyahu, is what most scholars believe is an Old Testament reference to the Lord Jesus Christ. Quote, "You shall suck the milk of nations, you shall nurse at the breast of kings, and you shall know that I, the Lord, am your Savior and your Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob." Isaiah 16, 60, 16. Now, I I was like, okay, what is this? I'm not really sure about this, like Isaiah's prophecy, and I didn't understand these verses, so I digged in a little bit more. I would like to know for myself, and I would like to explain to my audience what the hell is this. And then I came across this article by the Washington Post, which is just published yesterday. And it says many evangelicals see Israel Hamas war as part of a prophecy. I tried to, by the way, summarize this, but I think the entire article is very important for us to understand from where does Netanyahu stands and why is he mentioning this alleged prophecy, right? So for most Americans, events in Israel elicit a familiar set of emotions: sadness at the loss of life, particularly innocent civilians, anger, even fury at one side or another, and fear that the conflict may ultimately engulf the larger region. It's hard to find a silver lining on the cloud that now hangs over the Middle East. Unless, of course, you believe that bloodshed in Israel will pave the way for the second coming of Christ. Okay, so some people believe that this bloodshed in Israel is paving the way for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Secular voters may find it baffling, but it's a word view of a significant number of evangelical Christians and by extension a critical portion of the Republican Party. And while many might be familiar with the affinity that exists between Jews and evangelicals, the religious right's vitriolic response to the Israel Hamas war brings to the forefront prophecies that many Christians use to guide their thinking and actions. Now we may understand why all these so-called Christian evangelicals or conservatives who are close to the Republican Party who pretended to be anti-war and all of a sudden they became very pro-war and very pro-Israel. This article explains it all. Israel first became central to evangelical eschatology 4 centuries ago, when Protestant theologians, especially those of a millenarial bent, seized upon very specific passages about the end times. For example, in the Old Testament, the prophet Isaiah predicted that God shall set up an in Zion for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together and dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. What does that mean? Exegetes took this to mean that the return of Christ would take place once the Jewish diaspora returned to Palestine. Eager to put God's plan in motion, these Christian Zionists, not an oxymoron, began to push their governments to take active steps to get Jews back to Palestine. In 1891, the Christian Zionist William Blackstone drafted a petition to President Benjamin Harrison, signed by hundreds of prominent Americans, including J.P. Morgan and John Rockefeller, written against the backdrop of pogroms in Russia. The letter declared, "Let us now restore to the Jews the land of which they were so cruelly despoiled by our Roman ancestors." When the British government released the Balfour Declaration in 1917 supporting the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, they did so for geopolitical reasons. Evangelicals, though, interpreted the move as divine dispensation. The following year, the following year, one writer concluded, if we read scripture right, this restoration of the Jews to Palestine is going to hasten that day foretold in both the Old and New Testaments when the Lord Jesus will manifest himself again to the sons of men. These beliefs remained alive and well throughout the interwars years. And when the modern state of Israel came into being after the horrors of the Holocaust, evangelicals celebrated. The pastor Jerry Falwell would later claim that outside of the day of Christ's birth, quote, the most important date we should remember is May 14, 1948, the day Israel came into existence. As the new nation prospered and later triumphed the Six Day War in 1967, defeating three of its powerful neighbors and consolidating its borders, evangelicals felt increasingly confident that God's timepiece, Israel itself, was registering the final countdown. All that remained was for Israel to secure final victory over its enemies and rebuild the temple of Jerusalem. So what this is the final solution that they're talking about. The final victory against the Gaza Strip and then expelling or occupying completely the West Bank. This is their final solution, or aka final victory, because they want to build the temple of Jerusalem. This is in their wordings. I'm not bringing anything from myself, right? So, and then, if the prophets were right, some pretty unpleasant things would happen. A false Messiah known as the Antichrist would take over Jerusalem and install himself as the Savior before inaugurating the tribulation. A 7 year period of death and destruction, with most Jews perishing. Finally, Jesus would return to earth, overthrowing the pretender and inaugurating a 1,000 year reign of peace on earth. So they're waiting for the Jesus Christ to come back again after they build the temple in Jerusalem. And when Jesus comes, according to this ideology or according to the script, there will be 1,000 year of peace on earth. And by the 1970s and 1980s, a growing number of prominent evangelicals, including Falwell, made trips to Israel, eager to get in underground floor of the coming apocalypse. At first, the Israelis paid them little mind, but Prime Minister Menachem Begin quickly realized that the religious right had become increasingly influential in Ronald Reagan's Republican Party. Begin and other prominent Israelis now reached out to the evangelicals, attending prayer meetings and other religious events in the US. By the end of Reagan's presidency, the two groups had become, as the journalist Victoria Clark quipped, allies for Armageddon, united by shared ambition to see Israel conquer its enemies. Allies for Armageddon and conquer its enemies. In 1990s, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, an ambitious politician named Netanyahu, who's this current prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, quickly recognized that the religious right's vision for Israel matched his own, at least in the short term. When he became prime minister in 1996, he immediately flew a contingent of Christian Zionists to Israel, forging a close connection that has only grown in the intervening years, with evangelicals increasingly steadfast in their support for Israel. It's a match made in heaven, literally. For those primed to map current events onto biblical prophecies, the horrific violence is an unpleasant but essential means to an end, the end of the world as we know it. What do you think, guys, about this? Has any of you in the commentators, have you heard of this before? And does this terrify you? Are you a Christian? Are you an evangelical? What do you think about this? I'm very interested in knowing your opinion about this. Because if you're going to use this text on Palestine, it means that Israel is intending of occupying entire Palestine and not giving any statehood for the Palestinians. And it means that the plan is to expel the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and completely conquer the West Bank. And also, there are also some people say that this is the plan for Greater Israel. And according to them, this also means that Israel will expand between the Nile River in Egypt to the Euphrates in Syria. I truly don't know what to say about this, to be honest with you. I'm baffled. And when Netanyahu uses this as an excuse now to expand and bomb the Gaza Strip, I have to speak about it. I have to know what they think about this case. And to be honest with you, I also wanted to know if in the United States there are people who really believe in this. I mean, the evangelicals or the conservative politicians or the Republican politicians, right? And I found this very, very interesting reportage by Li Fang. He's probably a Chinese independent journalist, and he's talking with Republican Congress lawmakers. So he says, I talked previously to several lawmakers in Congress who explained that devotion to Israel, including US weapons and money, is part of their religious belief grounded in the Bible. The dynamic separates Israel, Palestine from a lot of other geopolitical concerns. Take a look.
We're talking to members of Congress about Israel and the U.S.'s relationship. All right, go.
The U.S. has an intrinsic interest in making sure that Israel not only receives our best prayers and offers of success, but our armaments, our money, and our ability to make sure that in a very dangerous reason this democracy survives.
There are some biblical prophecies that say that control of Jerusalem by the Jews is important for the second coming of Christ.
This entire matter is based upon faith of our maker, of our creator, but it's also faith of a chosen people.
Can you ask why the Democrats using our law enforcement officers as political pawns? The Democrats who have been campaigning to defund our law enforcement as their people, BLM and Antifa, riot and loot in the streets. How would you like to see the Capitol Police?
There's a new government in Israel. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the U.S. relationship with Israel?
There have been two nations created to glorify God, Israel and the United States of America. I will bless both. I will honor both. I will do all I can to stand and defend them.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Take care. Karen, give a quick second.
Sure, man.
Do you think there's a role of religious extremism here in the U.S. funding and shaping the conflict? I mean, there are a lot of folks who are part of the evangelical movement that want
Support Israel.
support Israel, and we don't really kind of see that same kind of constituent group pushing the other way.
Yeah, I wouldn't label the Baptist or the evangelical community as extreme because I feel like they're following the scripture and what the scripture says about Israel. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. I mean, they take it literal, and I'm one of those people.
You know, there's some Christian Zionists that do believe in some of these biblical prophecies, and they're very controversial even within the Christian Zionist evangelical community. Yeah, and believing in Armageddon, that there will be a final battle around Jerusalem, and that after that battle, there's a judgment day. Jews will be killed or converted. Jesus will come back. There's going to be a rapture event. What do you think about those kind of prophecies?
I believe Jesus will come back, and I'm going to be on his side.
What do you think, guys? Do you think that Jesus will come back again? Do you think that they are preparing for an Armageddon? Do you think that those who bless Israel will be blessed? Do you think that there is going to be a bloodbath in the region before the Jesus Christ come back? And why does Jesus Christ need the Armageddon and the bloodbath in the region for him to come back? And why would God have a map over his hand and he's checking this map and he says, United States is blessed and Israel is blessed and the rest are not blessed, and these politicians have to serve both the United States and Israel. Look, I'm not against their beliefs, right? But I want to understand why. Like, I'm not if you can convince me, I would go with you, right? But you cannot. And using a text that dates back thousands of years to push forward geopolitical agendas today in 2023 is very ridiculous. And you cannot convince me that these people truthfully believe in this deep inside. They are using religion to advance their geopolitical goals, as simple as it is. Just like other extremist groups have done in the region. I mean, now people would say, "Oh, you don't compare them to ISIS because it's illegal now." But in retrospect, ISIS also used religious texts. ISIS also justified its crimes. ISIS also pushed its geopolitical goals by using religion, interpretations, books, ahadith, and all this stuff, right? And we condemn them. Why can't we condemn these people? What is the difference? Both are pursuing the same approach. It's and these people are creating a situation, guys, and conviction among the people because of this text or because of these teachings. We will see people like Saraadav. She's, by the way, part of the WEF, World Economic Forum. This is what she says. She says, I want to see the mass graves, the refrigerated trucks full of bodies or corpses rotting in the street. There is no way Gazas could cope with 5,000 dead bodies this quickly, especially since they claim lack of electricity and water. Where are the pictures? Because of these teachings, we will see people like her, psychopaths, are calling for the murder of entire population, and she wants to see mass graves. She wants to see refrigerated trucks full of bodies because she doesn't believe that there are 5,000 dead bodies in the Gaza Strip. And by the way, guys, the numbers are over 7,000 now, and there are names and details, birth dates, addresses, their age, everything is documented. And these people are still pushing for this narrative and they don't want to believe. And the thing is, it doesn't stop here. This is the director, James Wood. He's the executive producer of Oppenheimer, this very famous movie. Look what he has posted yesterday. He says, bomb the savages who did this back to the Stone Age. There are no gray areas. Kill them all. This is James Woods. He's saying this. Every Hamas savage and every Hamas supporter on earth, bury them with entrails of pigs. And although Twitter says visibility limited, this post may violate Twitter's or X's rules against violent speech, but the tweet is still there and it's not taken down. And my Twitter or my X account is ghost banned for not calling for genocide and not calling for ethnic cleansing or bombing and killing people. I don't understand how is this tweet is even not taken down. And as I told you, it never stops, guys, because of these teachings and because of these so-called textbooks, religious textbooks. We will see people, for example, like Moshe Feiglin. Moshe Feiglin, I just checked him. He's the Moshe Feiglin. Is an Israeli politician and the leader of the libertarian Zionist party Zihut. Okay, and this is him. He says, "We still have not revenged in a biblical way. We didn't burn Gaza to ashes immediately. Create a tremendous humanitarian crisis. Level the entire area. Do not leave a stone upon stone in Gaza. Gaza needs to turn to Dresden. Annihilate Gaza now." Check.
לא נותרת אבן על אבן בעזה. עזה הופכת לדרזדן, כן, שריפה מוחלטת. כלו כל הקיצים, ואנחנו עדיין בראש של אוסלו, ועדיין מקישים בגג. הלילה עוד חיל האוויר הקיש בגג לפני שהקפיל מגדל, עלוב, בבית חולים, ליד בית החולים שיפה. במקום לשטח את כל עזה. אז כל ה-64 מנדטים שלך, בנימין נתניהו, צריכים עכשיו להפגין מול הבית שלך.
טוב.
תשמיד את עזה עכשיו. עכשיו.
So guys, as I told you, these types of teachings and these types of texts are encouraging these people to call for flattering Gaza, killing everyone there, 7,000 deaths. Among them, there are 3,000 kids. And and we don't know how long this is going to continue. So what's the rate? When will Israel find it that it was too much, you know? I don't think that they have the appetite to stop. It seems that they increased the acts of hostilities and bombardment of the Gaza Strip since 2 days. And they killed the entire family of the correspondent of Al Jazeera. And my position on Al Jazeera, I dislike Al Jazeera. But the journalist, the correspondent of Al Jazeera, he lost his entire family because of Israeli targeted bombing of his apartment, and they killed his wife, his son, and his daughter. And yesterday, I was also checking about this case. I unfortunately I cannot show you the video of when he received the news that his family were have been murdered by the Israeli side. I will just show you here very quickly if there is no, yeah, this is him. So while covering the aggression on Gaza, Israel bombed and killed the wife, son, and daughter of Al Jazeera journalist Wael Dahdouh in a target strike on a shelter house they had fled to. I mean, look at this. Look at the face of this guy. Seriously. Look at the pain on his face. Look. He just learned that his entire family got murdered by Israel. I don't want to show more because there are dead bodies now here, but this came only 48 hours after Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he asked the Qatari Prime Minister, because Jazeera is owned by Qatar, to rein in Al Jazeera Israel-Hamas war coverage. And the Israelis want to take down to ban Al Jazeera in Israel and in the West Bank from covering these atrocities in Gaza. Never stops, guys. It never stops. Look, Israel-Palestine war. Israel plans to flood Hamas tunnels with nerve gas, sources say. And this is for you also to know. The Middle East, I believe it's funded by Qatar. And when they say here, Palestinian groups expect Israel to flood Hamas tunnels with a type of nerve gas or chemical weapons under the surveillance of the US Delta Force commandos as part of a surprise attack on the Gaza Strip. And then they say a senior Arab source familiar with the Palestinian groups told Middle East Eye, I believe that this source is either a Qatari or a Saudi. They have very good sources in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar. And Israel and the US hope to achieve the element of surprise in order to penetrate Hamas tunnels, rescue an estimated 22 hostages, and kill thousands of soldiers belonging to Hamas or Qassam brigades, the source said, noting that the information they received came from a leak originating in the US. So this is the plan hinges on the element of surprise so as to decisively win the battle using internationally forbidden gases, particularly nerve gas and chemical weapons. Large quantities of nerve gas would be pumped into the tunnels, the source said. The source added that the US Delta Force will oversee large quantities of nerve gas being pumped into Hamas tunnels capable of paralyzing the bodily movement for a period of time between 6 and 12 hours. Now, you remember, guys, we discussed yesterday the claims made by Israel that Hamas is developing chemical weapons. So when we bring this report and compare it to what Israel is claiming about Hamas, which I mean, it's a very bad joke, right? For Hamas to develop chemical weapons, it would never happen in a place like the Gaza Strip with the geography and with the capabilities that they have, with lack of electricity, refrigerators, and like it's impossible, right? So it gives me the impression that somebody is planning for a false flag attack. The Israelis have nerve agent gas. And if the Israelis use this nerve agent gas, let's say, in one of the tunnels, and then accuse Hamas of leaking some gas or some accident attack or an accident that happened in the Hamas tunnels, then they would blame Hamas for it, right? I truly believe that there is going to be a false flag attack, whether probably in the Gaza Strip, but also highly likely in the United States or in Germany. This is just my um, prediction. I might be 100% wrong, of course, but I believe that they need the false flag attack now in the US to convince the people to participate in this war in the Gaza Strip by the US Marines or the US Special Forces. And I also believe that there is going to be, if the people planning this want to also convince the Germans to participate in this, they would also resort to false flag attack against a Jewish community here or a synagogue, etc., and then they blame it on the the usual suspects, and then mobilize the public opinion and open the appetite for war. I think there is going to be a false flag attack. It's either in the United States or in Germany or in both places or in the Gaza Strip. I hope I'm wrong, but this is what I expect from this. And speaking of these texts and what it justifies, this is the former Israeli ambassador to the UN, guys, Dan Gillerman. He described the Palestinians as inhuman animals on Sky News, and this was happened only again today. Sorry, this was only yesterday. So all these so-called textbooks, religious verses, and everything that they use in order to justify the war against Gaza or occupying the entire Palestinian territories, it also comes with the side of dehumanization of the enemy, right? And we discussed that in length on Syriana Analysis. But today, it's becoming like in the first few days of this conflict, it would have made sense if they use this language because they were probably emotional and they were like driven by emotions and they were very mad and very angry and hostile and they want to take revenge. But it's been 2 weeks now, and after 17 days of bombardment of the Gaza Strip and killing over 7,000 people, it seems the appetite is not going to come to an end anytime soon, and they're still comparing the Palestinians to inhuman animals.
I just want to ask you then about something else he said in his speech, which is about the collective punishment, as he put it, of the Palestinian people. And I want to talk about that in the context of the blockade and keeping fuel out of Gaza. I just wonder if you think that that is really necessary.
You know, I'm very puzzled by the constant concern which the world and also Britain, I must say, Mark, is showing for the Palestinian people, and is actually showing for these horrible, inhuman animals who have done the worst atrocities that this century has seen, and the worst atrocities that Jews have suffered since the Holocaust. I mean, you know, when the United States reacted to 9/11, I don't remember people shedding tears for the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Your country, Mark, actually, Britain, actually joined them and even sent your royals to fight in Afghanistan. When the Ukrainians reacted to Russia's invasion, I don't remember people worrying about the poor Russian soldiers and whether they had enough food. All of a sudden, when it comes to Israel, everybody is becoming a great humanitarian, totally forgetting what happened 2.5 weeks ago, which is unforgettable and unforgiven.
Yeah, the difference is that you guys are killing civilians and you're not waging ground offensive and man up and fight like a man against the Hamas militants. The difference is that there were thousands of American soldiers, the Brit soldiers, going to at least fight and not to mass the forces on the borders with their enemy and then keep bombing them for 2 weeks and not invading this place. Of course, the Americans committed similar atrocities and the Brits as well. But the point is, the Israelis are massing 350,000 soldiers now, and they're not even daring to go to the Gaza Strip. They're calling their friends, their allies, the warships, the intelligence, special forces, and everything against Hamas militants, 40,000 of them. It doesn't make any sense that if Israelis want to invade the Gaza Strip, there are two ways of doing that. One, you either go to the Gaza Strip and you wage a ground offensive and face the Hamas militants face to face, or you use a particular type of weaponry that can destroy the bunkers. And there are types of missiles that can open holes and destroy what is in the bunker, and even if it is a nuclear bunker, for protecting from the nuclear weapons, right? Israelis have that capabilities, but the type of armament and the type of shelling they're doing in the Gaza Strip is just to flatter the residential buildings, just to kill as much as Palestinians they can. And the point for that is they want to spread desperation among the Palestinian people so that they lose all hope for the future. And even if this war is over, they would be so traumatized that they would not want to stay in the Gaza Strip anymore, and they want to leave, because in their opinion it will be, if this time Israel bombed us in this intensity, then what is going to happen in the future? They want to spread this hopelessness among the Palestinians. This is the goal. The goal is not to terrify the Hamas militants. If they want to fight against the Hamas militants, there are so many ways of doing so, but they're not doing it. I just want to, guys, thank Black Tie. Thank you very much for your very generous support, and very thank you also to Daniela for the generous support, guys. Thank you so much. And just in case, guys, if you want to support independent work like this, you can see the link is already scrolling under the screen. It's on Patreon, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. It's a great help from you and support for me to continue to become first fully independent, because I'm still not. Still have to work a second job in order to survive in this jungle. Once I become a complete independent, that would give me the privilege to have more time to prepare better content for the public, and also I can grow faster. What I'm going to show you now, there is a few things that I wanted to show you, and I think the most important one is also coming from the Brazilian president, Lula. And I know some of you do not like Lula, and I understand your concerns also about Lula, about his ties to the WEF, and his being a little bit oppressive with the journalists, etc. But here he says this is not a war, this is a genocide, and I think he is very correct on this. And I cannot but show you what the president of a very major country in the world and is part of the BRICS is saying about the Gaza, which coincidentally, or it is also my opinion. And I say this is not a war, this is genocide.
Não se trata de ficar discutindo quem está certo ou quem está errado, quem deu o primeiro tiro, quem deu o segundo. O problema é o seguinte aqui, não é uma guerra, é um genocídio que já matou quase 2.000 crianças que não tem nada a ver com essa guerra, que são vítimas dessa guerra. E, sinceramente, eu não sei como é que um ser humano é capaz de guerrear sabendo que o resultado dessa guerra é a morte de criança inocente. Não se trata de ficar discutindo quem está certo ou quem está errado, quem deu o primeiro tiro, quem deu o segundo. O problema é o seguinte aqui, não é uma guerra, é um genocídio que já matou quase 2.000 crianças que não tem nada a ver com essa guerra, que são vítimas dessa guerra. E, sinceramente, eu não sei como é que um ser humano é capaz de guerrear sabendo que o resultado dessa guerra é a morte de criança inocente.
So the Brazilian president, he had a really good position, in my opinion, on the case of Ukraine. And he mediated, by the way, between Russia and the Western powers to achieve a ceasefire. And he also promoted for a peace process. I mean, regardless of his domestic policies, this is a very important approach by Brazil. And Brazil is a very important player, especially that it's part of the BRICS, and also it's a major economy. And there should be more countries and more leaderships like in Brazil who are pushing forward for peace processes and negotiations. And unfortunately, nowadays that we can see, even in the UN Security Council, the powers aren't interested in a ceasefire. And when Russia and China propose a ceasefire, let's say a draft resolution, the Americans and the Brits, they vetoed it. And the Americans and the Brits, in order to justify their actions, they proposed their so-called draft resolution, and this time they just want to condemn Hamas without condemning Israel and without even proposing ceasefire. They don't want ceasefire. This is not the time for ceasefire for them. And I truly believe, guys, and I've been mentioning and repeating this so many times, the goal is escalation. I do not believe that all these warships are coming to the region, and all these special forces stationed now in the neighboring countries, in Cyprus, in Greece, in Jordan, and in other places, just to deter Hezbollah. I told you this is no more analysis. I'm also receiving signals and information from Damascus that they believe that the Americans are going to, if this escalates and if it becomes a regional war, Americans are going to hit Damascus. Americans are going to try to kill President Bashar al-Assad. And you listen this from me on Syriana Analysis, and I do not say such things out of the blue. And I'm hearing this from Damascus. People are alarmed. And also, there are information coming from Washington, D.C. that I double checked today with a friend who has very good connection with politicians in the United States through contacts that he has. And they think that they have to finish this business in Syria, which is regime change. And this could be an opportunity for them to hit Damascus and change the political system and install a regime that is friendly to the United States and Israel, and also divide Syria into at least three parts. One is a Kurdish state, the second is a Druze state, and the rest let them fight each other in the middle. And this is very, very scary scenario, in my opinion, if it happens. And the question here remains, this is a question for you, what would be the reaction of the allies of Syria, Russia, Iran, and Syria itself? What could they do if such a scenario, if the Americans try to implement such a scenario? Let me know, guys, your opinions. I'm trying to check some of the comments here. Human Rights Watch came out and they criticized the European Union for their double standards. And they say when double standards are exposed, the motives of the EU are questioned and its credibility is eroded. This is Tirana Hassan. She's addressing the what is the European Parliament Subcommittee on Human Rights and on Israel, Palestine, and international humanitarian law. There's so many organizations, they cannot stay silent anymore because the gravity of the issue in the Gaza Strip, it's not just 300 people are dying like in the past. There is the intention and the practice of ethnic cleansing on the ground in the Gaza Strip. So these human rights organizations cannot stay silent, even if they are biased, because there are things that you cannot hide. There are statements that been said by the Israeli officials. They are saying what they're going to do, which is ethnic cleansing. They are saying it on TV, and they are practicing it through their policy, implementing it through their policy, so they cannot stay silent.
Hamas and Islamic Jihad's heinous crimes shocked us all. They deserve firm, unambiguous condemnation. The victims and their families deserve our strong support and solidarity. Hostages must be released, and those responsible for war crimes must be held to account. There is never any justification for targeting innocent civilians. But the very same principle is true when it comes to Israel's response to crimes by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. You cannot cut food, water, electricity that are vital for the lives of over 2 million people who have been living in a blockade for 16 years. You cannot wipe out entire families, let a health system be destroyed, raze entire districts to the ground, refer to people as animals. You can't punish an entire population by preventing desperately needed aid from reaching them. International humanitarian law is clear. Atrocities from one side do not justify atrocities from the other side. No party to any conflict is above international humanitarian law. Israeli and Palestinian lives have the same dignity, and attacks on either should spark the same level of indignation. But regrettably, this is not the message of your resolution last week. When double standards are exposed, the motives of the EU are questioned, and its credibility is eroded. Impunity fuels abuses.
So one of the commentators, Alexander Vidakovich, he says, this stinks of, we must say this because we pretend to be humanitarian organization. This could be accurate. You might be correct. What I'm trying to say is that the approach of the Israelis are too scandalous even for biased organizations, they cannot pretend that they have to look to the other way. You know what I mean? And I don't have a huge faith in the human rights organization or in the Amnesty International. They have done a really biased work in the past. They're not saints, you know. I understand that, and you're probably correct. But what I'm trying to say is, it's too blatant and it's too obvious what Israel is doing that even biased organizations cannot stay silent anymore, like the human rights organizations, for example. But this woman, Ione Belarra, she is the Minister of Social Justice in Spain. She's the only Western politician that my ears have heard and my eyes have seen after this invasion and the bombardment of the Gaza Strip, who is calling for sanctions against Israel and sending Netanyahu to The Hague. And I would like to ask you here, how is she saying these things without consequences on her career in Spain? Is this allowed or tolerated in Spain to say, like, criticize Israel harshly and why Israel is not coming after her? Because if you say something like this in the United States or Germany or Britain, for example, your career would be over, right? But this woman is telling the obvious, and she's proposing a solution which is, in my opinion, is very accurate and it's very it fits to the situation, right?
Hoy hemos conocido que Netanyahu ha declarado non grata a las Naciones Unidas en Israel. Eso significa que su personal no tendrá visados para viajar al terreno. Y esto es consecuencia de que nunca en las últimas décadas se le ha parado los pies ni a Netanyahu ni al Estado de Israel en su política de ocupación ilegal del territorio palestino. Hay 4 cosas que los Estados europeos sí pueden hacer con carácter inmediato. La primera, suspender relaciones diplomáticas con el Estado de Israel. La segunda, establecer sanciones económicas firmes, como se hicieron con la cúpula de Putin. Embargo de armas en tercer lugar. Y en cuarto lugar, como también se hizo en el caso de la guerra de Ucrania, llevar a Netanyahu y a todos los responsables políticos que están llevando a cabo bombardeos contra población civil ante la Corte Penal Internacional. Actuemos, aún es posible detener el genocidio. Hoy hemos
So she's proposing suspending diplomatic relations with Israel, sanctioning and imposing embargo on Israel, and also sending Benjamin Netanyahu and the officials in Israel to ICC. One of the commentators say that she has more balls than the men politicians in the West. I don't think it's about that. You know, I just think that she's backing her back on something. It is not easy to say what she says in public without consequences. If you're a professor, you lose your job. Even if you're a Jewish, you would lose your job as a professor in academia. It's a character assassination if you criticize Israel, right? And the other day, I saw a friend of mine. She was kicked out of her job for criticizing Israel on social media platforms. There's so many people who would not even get hired again after they are being kicked out because it's a character assassination. You're done if you are painted or stamped by the anti-Semitism, because it's very easy to accuse you, right? And criticism of Israelis nowadays is not tolerated in any place, unfortunately, in the Western world. In some exceptions, I'm seeing in the streets of Spain and Paris, yes, they are going to the streets, but the state institutions, the politicians, the security apparatuses in these countries are all embedded and in the same bed with Israel, and they will not tolerate this, and they're coming after people. They are criminalizing pro-Palestinian demonstrations. They're criminalizing people who are pro-Palestine, not pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine. But it's very easy. They're equating between Hamas and Palestine. They're equating, like, if you wear the kufiya of the Palestinians, you are pro-terrorist, you're an anti-Semite. And if you say free Palestine, you're an anti-Semite. Everything, you know, the minimum of the criticism of Israel is not tolerated, unfortunately. But is this going to change in the near future? I don't have a hope in that. I think things will change drastically in the West, and the bar of the freedom of speech will go down and down and down. and it started a few years ago, and it accelerated after the corona crisis. And now I think with the Israeli Palestine conflict, it will accelerate more, and people will find themselves in a position that the cancel culture will be normalized everywhere, and people will come under attack. They will lose their jobs, they will lose their financial resources, and their bank accounts will be closed. And all this has already happened in the past, but it will be more normalized and it will be more widespread among the people. And this is exactly why the idea of the digital currencies are very, very dangerous, guys. If they adopt a digital currency and you don't have a cash money, they can control your digital currency, they can control your wallet, they can control and what you have the right to expend and what you don't have the right to expend, and what can you purchase and what you can't. The same thing applies for the electric cars. You can drive your car to these certain geographies, certain area, but not to other areas. It's a dangerous times. So if you want my humble opinion, reject the digital currencies. They are all in one package with this oppression of the opinions and suppression of freedom of opinion in different parts of the world. And digital currency will be the last nail in the coffin of freedoms in general, and especially freedom of speech, because after that, when they penalize you, you lose your money completely. So don't take this as a financial advice, but if you have some money and some assets on the side, buy gold, buy crypto, and make cash. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, in the future. So I would like just to thank Richard Law Beachster. He says, you're doing good, informative work. Keep it up. Your insight is interesting and appreciated. Thank you very much, Richard. And also, thank you so much for the generous support. As I promised you guys, these donations and those support that come to Syriana Analysis, just like the support that came to Syriana Analysis, and I bought this lens that looks like really professional now. I will upgrade the software. I will need 600 euros to upgrade the software in order for me to also broadcast full HD and remove this logo of StreamYard from this software. So if you want to support my independent work, here is the link in the on the screen. You can become a patron. It only costs you $2 per month, but it's a great help for me. So we will see you tomorrow, guys. And tomorrow I'm hosting, just for you to know, tomorrow I'm hosting a very good colleague. I will show you his Twitter account just for you to little hype, because I really like him. Daniel McAdams, he's coming tomorrow to my show to speak about again Palestine, Israel, and also we try to speak again about the American position on Israel, Palestine, and also a little bit about Ukraine. So stay tuned tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time. He will come as my guest on Syriana Analysis. I'm very happy and glad to introduce him to you. And we will have, if you have important questions tomorrow, please just type and I will check the questions during the conversation, and I will try to ask him and direct him these questions. But most importantly, if it is a super chat or a super comment or whatever, because this super chat and super comments become like very visible to me, those will be the priority. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. Ciao.